Hello and welcome to this special episode of Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers podcast. Today I have a super special guest as I have a member of Reclaim Your Fullness Women Circles, Cecilia, that has agreed to come on and speak to her own experience, her own healing journey, and her own experience inside the circle and the community. So I am so honored to be able to do this episode and so happy that you came. So welcome, Cecilia. I'm super happy that you're here and thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So you've been in the circle for about a year at this point, I think, because we started February last year actually with the circles, and you were amongst the first bunch of women that actually joined. So where I would like to start to kind of give a little bit of context to everyone listening in is, how was your life before meeting the podcast? Because I know you met the podcast first and then you contacted me to join the circle. So how was your life before that, before the podcast and before the circle?
Yeah, thank you. It's what a journey. You know, it's been a complete transformation, a very beautiful transformation for me. Looking back, and it is good to have that 1 year marker, right? We all think, oh, New Year, and what was I doing last year? And so it's a similar process for me where I look back and think, wow, what a journey. What had happened, the instigating incident that got me here is my father died, and I was through this process watching my mother deal with this, and it hit me like a ton of bricks that the narcissistic qualities that I had seen in her were really much, much worse than I had ever realized. And so, on top of grieving my dad, I had suddenly started grieving something much bigger, which was a lack of a mother that through my whole life. And it was quite devastating. It was just a realization, like, oh my goodness, this is worse than I realized, wanted to admit, was shown, whatever. So I was grieving normally for a death, but then I was starting to think, what can I do with this other grief? And I just started looking at resources online, and I listened to kind of several different podcasts, but it was yours that made me realize this is very specific to daughters of narcissistic mothers. And I thought there's something interesting here. And having the ability to speak with you first was invaluable because I got to feel your energy and your approach and your strength and your kindness that made me feel like this might be something that would be really, really helpful for me. And you mentioned the women's circle, and I thought, I don't know if that's my thing. Right. And by the way, that transformed hugely later. But it was, I was a little nervous in sharing my life with other people I didn't know. And so, but I was open. I was open to trying, and I'm so glad I did. And I remember you saying, I really recommend that you do, a set of sessions. And I'm thinking, maybe I'll just do one or two. And here I am a year later. I mean, it's been incredible. And I want to walk through some of the specifics of why that's been incredible for me. But what happened, basically, to answer your question in a shorter way, my life before this was living with a narcissistic mother without realizing that that was one of the main issues. And that is so damaging to the self-esteem, my self-esteem, to my insides, to my perception, to my confidence. So now I'm fully aware. The lights are on, and it's been an incredible process of self-discovery, and yeah, a lot of different things we can go into from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your answer. You mentioned not knowing if the women's circles were for you, not thinking maybe that they were your thing. And I do know that free, because I have the application call, which is what you applied for. You came onto the call, and I know that that is quite the obstacle for so many women, because I know that that application call, I always get women going, oh my God, I'm just so uncomfortable with joining, I'm afraid, and this and that. So and I have been like that, joining women's circles myself when I had to join and when I joined, so I totally understand it. But I'd like to know if you can go a little deeper
Mhm.
into what, if you had like your main fears on that, or your main reservation, uh, before you actually met me, or before you actually even came into the circles, because you could have had reservations even after meeting me, and I totally am fine with that. If you did, that's fine. So yeah, if you could bring us deeper in that, if you remember.
Specifically reservations about doing the work. Um, you know, I was going to say that what might make me a little different is, number one, I'm an older person, I'm over 50. And what that means to me is that I have in my life had enough instances of pain or regret, divorce, counseling, that really got me to a place of being comfortable with inner transformation. It gave me this understanding that when you go in, you actually have a lot more rewards than if you're just uncomfortable. So I came in with a specific skill set of wanting to transform and knowing that that can be painful. And so that's the first thing I came in with. The second thing that I came with it, which is really, really important, and you don't really bring this up as a central piece to the healing, but for me, it was a very important piece to the healing, which is having a strong connection with my higher power. And I don't even know what to call that or how to describe that, because it's not a traditional faith or religion. It's just something that I have developed in my later years that has become really, really strong in me. And I'm a little bit of a mystic. I have this sense of like, something is giving me an insight into this and I don't know what it is, but I'm going to follow that. And so I have that strong sense of intuition and following something that I don't quite understand why, but it's something that I need to do because it feels the right thing. I don't know how to articulate. It's very, very difficult to articulate higher power and faith and religion and all that kind of stuff. But whatever that is, I came in with it pretty strong. Ironically, I can't describe it, but it's very, very strong
Mhm.
in me. So that, I think, was an important asset to come into. What was the other thing that I came into that? Oh, the body. So when you had told me that you were a Reiki master, my whole body lit up, because I've worked with body healers before, and I find them to be one of the most gifted healing practices that there can be. And I came in with the understanding of something a friend taught me called the body compass, which is to understand when something feels right or doesn't feel right based on a situation, and to follow that, and that the body does not lie. So I came in with that understanding. So higher power, an ability to really go to places without fear and understand that I'll come out in a different way, a better way, and an understanding of the body. So those things I think were helpful.
I get that. Thank you for answering that. And yeah, it's beautiful. And I know you mentioned I don't keep it as a central focus, because the women's circles and the community, it's neutral to whatever beliefs. So sometimes you'll be referring to higher power. I can talk about the earth holding you, or your allies, or your angels, or your higher power, or source, or is whatever. It's actually applicable to really any belief. But yeah, that connection is so central, and it's so important. So yeah, I love that you actually came in with that, because we've been able to have pretty deep conversations on that. So I've loved that, absolutely. um do you remember what was the first session like for you? How did we, not in details, but like, the experience, the overall experience that you had? Because the first session can be both challenging or exciting, or you're finding your feet, you don't know how the thing is going to work. So yeah, if you remember any of that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that you started us off with a practice, and I didn't expect that, because I was trying to figure out, how does this body work on Zoom, right? I know that especially during COVID, a lot of people were able to have all kinds of sessions on Zoom. And the fact that it was international, so we have people from all different time zones, and we're on Zoom together and we don't know each other, but you're doing body work. Like I had a lot of like, how is this going to go? Right. But for whatever reason, the practices that you bring us through are highly individual. So even though we're in a group, you're walking us through something that only we can feel, right? And in our own space. And I think that that is something I didn't quite have an understanding of. For whatever reason, I thought we were all going to feel something together, or we're all going to, and of course we share afterwards, but the fact that we can be in our own space, we can move around, we can lay down, we can sit down, we can, you make it very flexible. So it really is very individual. And whenever you go in and close your eyes and are guided into a practice that helps us feel where we are stuck, it can't not be individual. It is a very individual process. So, and then when we share, you can see that, because people are like, well, this is what I was feeling, or this is what I was feeling, and it was not what I was feeling, right? Meaning I was feeling what they were feeling. So it's just very interesting to experience our own blocks and then to share that with each other. It's a very safe feeling of yeah, I want to share my personal block. And again, the intention is because I want to heal. So the intention is not to look good, or the intention is not to, judge other people because of what I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just the intention is to heal. So here we are. And there's something that happens in community. When you're sharing in community, something else transforms. And I didn't quite understand the power of that until joining the Women's Circle.
Mm.
But I think the number one thing there is safety. And you, as a leader, provide that. There were also some things that you did that I didn't expect around rules, right? Because we all come in with these really fucked up patterns. And so, am I allowed to?
You're okay. You're okay. Yeah, you can. That's fine. Keep it real. That's okay.
We come in with these, we come in with these ways of communicating, and I'm a communications person. I revel in wanting to communicate better. We come in with these communications patterns that we think are good, and you've had to gently give boundaries within the group. And I learned from that, because we all want to give each other advice, for instance, and you're like, nope, that's not what we do here, unless someone asks for it, right? Which is a basic tenet of communication. But for whatever reason, when you're sharing and you're vulnerable, you lose some of that. You bleed into these boundaryless places, and you were really good about kind of putting that together in a really gentle but strong container. So I appreciate how you ran that. It felt safe. Feels safe.
Mm. Oh, I love that. It's lovely to hear. I'm loving this conversation because, as a guide within the group, I of course have intentions as to what I want the container to be and as to what I want the practices to be. And I do have trust. I've done this for 15 years with different modalities and in different ways. So I do know that certain practices work and how they work. But yes, Zoom is a different type of container. And my intention is for the individual experience to be safe and to be allowed, because that is where the healing is. In so many different places, you are given a set of things to do that have very specific expectations, and so if you don't fall into that exact category, or if you don't answer correctly, then you may feel like you're wrong or you're not doing the practices right or stuff like that. So it's very important. I love hearing from you that has been your experience, that you have been able to feel individually for yourself in your own space, in your own room where you are, and the practice has guided you where you needed to go, which is different than where anyone else needs to go. So yeah, that's super important. And also hearing that you're feeling safe, that because I've shared that before. I do share that in the circle when I get that as a feedback. That for me is like the highest feedback, because I know I've never felt safe in my entire life with my mother, and I know that that's the experience of the women that come in. So providing a safe space, safety is the first step to healing. We can't heal, we can't expand, we can't go if we don't feel safe. So that's the experience. I'm very happy to hear. Yes, so you were talking about how you mentioned earlier that you sort of can go through how you've transformed or the learnings that you've had. So if you want to go deeper on that, if you have things to share on that.
Yeah, I think I came in with the assets. I told you about the assets I came in with, having a belief in higher power and so on. But the con list, or the things that I did not come in with, is I really didn't understand narcissism to the full extent. And so that was kind of a deluge for me. It was drinking from a fire hose of pain, right? And all of your podcast topics, I mean, I was like, what? It was like you were reading my life, and I have been through therapy. I mean, I've been through therapy, and for whatever reason, I shouldn't say for whatever reason, there's multiple issues in my house. We grew up really poor. There was some violence, there was addiction. I mean, there was many other things that I have been healing through in my life. So it makes sense why this kind of took a back burner in some ways. But listening to all of the ways in which a narcissistic mother can traumatize you has been unbelievably accurate in my life. And so I was just deluged. I was like, wow. So I was a little taken aback with how much was going on with this. And then the other thing I didn't expect is, in the body, even though I've done body work before, there was some buried trauma in there. And so memories were coming out, right? And I remember you talking about, when you feel safe, more things will come out. And it's true. I did feel safe enough to embrace some of those things, and they're dark and they're sad. Um, but here I am, right? And so you helped us with all of those things when they come up too. How do you self-regulate? How do you self-soothe? How do you embrace this? How do you stay with it? How do you share and ask for help? How do you get support? All that. So that was another thing I did. I didn't expect that there would be even more trauma after all the therapy that I've done. The other thing I was trying to wrestle with in coming into the program initially is this idea of no contact. And once I started really understanding the full extent of what a narcissistic parent is like, I absolutely understood the no contact rule, or the low contact rule. And I was really struggling with, how am I going to do that in our family system? We have a deeply codependent family system, and we have, and my mother at this point in time is older and lots of different health ailments. And my sons are here, and it's like it's a lot. There's a big family system here that it didn't feel quite clear on how that would work if I was to do no contact. So I was really struggling with that. The last thing that complicates our system is that there's money in our family, and it's used as a weapon. And I had recently just lost my job, so I was in a place of really it's a scary place to be in, and a fantasy place to think about this fantasy money, right? This phantom money. So I had a lot to work through. I had buried trauma. I had a codependent family system. I have this money that's hanging out there, and then I'm being like absolutely deluged with all this narcissistic information. So I kind of came in like, wow. I've got a lot of work to do. But to answer your question about some of the practices that were helpful, like if I look back on where I started last year and where I am today, I mean, it's like whiplash, Matilda. It's such a beautiful process that I've been through. It's such a beautiful transformation. And some of the main practices are, I mean, first of all, grounding us all the time. I mean, I don't know if this is just all women in this day and age, if it's mothers this day and age, if it's our, addiction to technology in this day and age, but we really don't feel our bodies the way that you help us do in these practices. And some of them are very simple. Some of them are 15 minutes, 12 minutes. I mean, but to do them on a regular basis is absolutely the reason why I'm where I am today. But I would say that the two that have been really impactful to me is, and I know some people are listening to this who have no idea what we're talking about, so I'll just explain them briefly. But one is the grounding exercise, which is for me an experience where I realize that underneath me, around me, and in me is an endless source of light and love, protection, and I think I'll just stop there. Light, love, and protection is endless. So it's kind of what I would call a sacred parent, right? This is what you brought us to. So to understand that that is always in me and accessible anytime I want, I suddenly realized I don't need this dysfunctional parent in my life to be that, right? And that is transformational, because now that I have access to that, I don't need her to be a quote unquote mother. And this is a way for me to say, I don't need that. I have it. I have it in me. And you taught me how to get there for myself. So that's huge. The other one is the inner womb practice, which, for those listening, it's a practice by which me personally, if I was to draw a picture of what my body felt like coming into this practice, I would have a big, giant cinder block head, a giant, beautiful, open sky heart, and a cinder block womb. So if you can picture that lovely image, right? My head was blocked and my womb was blocked, or my belly was blocked, I would say. And now my head is still, I'm still working on my head space, but my womb is wide open and my heart is wide open. And when those two channels are open, whew, I mean, it's flowing here. It's flowing in a beautiful way. And the womb practice for me has been an incredible uh, way to get in touch with who I really am and what I really want to do, which in the narcissistic parent world, I've been told what has been important to me based on what was important to her. What was valuable or exciting to her was the only thing that mattered, not what was exciting or important to me. And this practice has retaught me what is important and exciting to me. So I would say those are the two most important practices, even though all of them have made an impact. These are the ones that stick with me that I am beyond grateful for.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just for those listening in, these practices are among those available in the library, which will be part of the Reclaim Your Fullness online community that's launching soon in February. So that those are the practices that kind of are the foundation of the work, among other things. So yeah, just to put that there, if you wanna benefit from those practices, if you wanna join the community, those practices are gonna be there in the library. And I love what you said, that it actually helped you through finding what's exciting for you, what's you, and as opposed to this conditioning of all that there is allowed is what's exciting to our narcissistic mother, or what they approve of, or what they tell us that it's okay to do. And that these practices have helped you in reconnecting with what is you. And that's like, that is the reclaiming your fullness. When I called the whole thing like that, that was actually the point. Is like, you reclaim who you are, because up until this point we don't know who we are. I'm still figuring out stuff. I'm still going through, whoa, yeah, this is actually what I like. And every now and again I have this light bulb moment. So it's such a journey. I love that had that meaning for you. So thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Well, and I'll share the most important, I'm bearing the lead here, but the most important thing that I've come to in this practice, and I know this is not for everybody, but I've come to full forgiveness of my mom. So going to a place of, do I need to, first of all, wow, damaging, holy shit, that was the worst childhood. I mean, really bad things, to, you know, this is a monster, to, I can't have this in my life, I can't be around her, to boundaries and practices that's like, okay, I can still be around her. It doesn't feel great, but I'm doing these practices that feels better, to realizing I have the parent I need. I have the sacred in me that I don't need her to be anything else. And at this point, I'm in a place of like understanding her trauma, why she got to the way she is. It has nothing to do with me. That's her journey in life. What I'm grateful for, that she was the vehicle that brought me into this beautiful planet. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous life. I have a beautiful, beautiful life, and she brought me here. So I'm grateful for that. And then I'm grateful for other things that she did provide, and I can stay in that gratitude. and be fine with that. But ultimately, if I have a relationship that is so abundant and endless and sacred, I don't need her to be anything else. So I've come to a place of like full forgiveness. And by the way, not by the way, the most important thing I've learned is that's actually who I am. I am actually somebody who can forgive at the deepest level. I'm actually somebody who can love unconditionally. And the reason that this is important is because I was told all my life by her that I was a hard person, that I was a mean person, that I had too many friends, I didn't pay enough attention to my family, that I was cold, ice cold. And it's the opposite. I mean, look at what I'm saying. And if you know me, and you know me now, right, Matilda? I mean, it's like
Oh,
my heart
yes.
is massive. It's the opposite. And so to reclaim that, oh my God. I mean, that to me is the most beautiful thing in the world. And how ironic that I get to find out this lesson by her narcissism. It's incredible. So I feel transformed. I feel fully in my body. I feel fully in my heart, which is something to celebrate. It's something to absolutely celebrate. So, whew.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing. I know that this can actually be emotionally quite intense, as in a beautiful way, even not necessarily in a bad way, but I get that. So thank you so much for sharing so deeply. And yes, you're such a wonderful person with such a big heart. I know, like I love talking to you, connecting with you, having you in the circle. It's like you're such a presence. But it's also true that we can be told that, as in you can meet a million people that tell you how wonderful you are, but if your mother has put you down enough when you were a child and growing up, it's really hard to believe the good stuff. And we still can cling to those sort of bad things we were told growing up, and until you get the embodied experience like you're describing, whatever other people are telling you can kind of, it just passes through and doesn't really stick until you get that experience fully.
So true. So true. Yeah. Yeah. It's invaluable. I mean, this is the kind of work that has transformed my life. And I highly encourage anybody listening that if you want to get to the next level, this is it. This is it. And that was my dedication coming into this is I want a deep spiritual practice that transforms me out of this grief and the deep grief. Of course there's a grief of losing my dad, but the deep grief of not ever being loved at that level. Ooh, that's some deep grief. And I have transformed because I found it in other ways and you helped me find it. And it's again so individual, so
Mm.
individual. And it's you're an excellent guide in bringing us through there. And it's funny because I remember sometimes in the group you would concentrate on something somebody said, like, whoa, 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 let's unpack that, right? And we would stay with whatever that block was or whatever that, instance was, and we all learn from it. And we're all learning to be kind to ourselves and to each other. And by the way, you've made me a better friend. And I said this to one of my friends recently. I told her about the fact that I was in this group, and she's like, "What are you talking about? You were always a good friend." I was like, "No, no, no. There's something different about the way that you teach us to be present and kind with someone's pain that has absolutely transformed the way I am with my friends. And I can hold them in a different space. And I don't know if I can describe it more than that, but I mean, I always showed up for, people's traumas or, if something happened to them, of course I'm there, but there's something about the day-to-day love and connection that is, you've made me a better friend. And I'm so grateful for that too. The practices have also done that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is when you can be a better friend to yourself and to all the parts of you, which is kind of, it is part of healing and it is part of the process. In a lot of the practices, and I know you know that, I'm just speaking for the people listening in, we're going in to actually contact ourselves and contact part of ourselves that have not been contacted in such a long time through the body, but also like parts that feel, as you mentioned, grief, or parts that feel rejected, parts that feel abandoned, and all of that. So when you start being a better friend for yourself, then it kind of comes as a natural consequence in a beautiful way that you are going to be able to be a better friend for everyone. It does, and I've seen that happening. It has happened in my life as well, but it changes relationships in a good way. Some we lose too along the way, because sometimes, I know you mentioned the no contact, and if for people listening to the podcast, by listening in that I don't promote I am no contact with my mother, but I don't actually promote that as the solution necessarily. That was just, that's my personal experience. And we have in the group members that chose to go full no contact. We have members that are low contact, and members that, as you mentioned, actually managed to create a healing that you can have a relationship with your mother now that's actually fine being in contact. So it can work always, but sometimes we lose certain relationships in the transformation, but the ones that remain and then the new ones that form are deeper and more real, because your relationship with yourself is deeper and more real.
Yeah, no, and thank you for the different variations of contact and reminding me of that, because I will say in my experience in this group, I absolutely wanted to start with no contact. It was so painful in the beginning to realize what I had been through and what I had subjected myself to in all of this bullshit, right? This just not truths, just not true at all. Who I am and who I am in the world and who I am with her, all of it was wrong. And then in starting to realize that and have contact, it was almost like when you're ready to see it, you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere. And it became untenable to be around her. Absolutely like untenable. And then you gave us some boundary practices. And that was really helpful, because I was like, okay, actually, if I'm prepared for some of this and I have a strong boundary, then I feel better. But she didn't. She didn't like the boundaries. And then came out, the claws, then came out the accusations. And then I got scared. Like even with all this work, I got scared. She's going to cut me off. Right. Forget about no contact on my end. She's going to have no contact on her end. Right. So it was this battle of like, is that what I want? That feels really scary and sad. But again, working through the body, working through the boundaries, working through the low contact period that I've had. And in this process, we've had 2 knockdown, drag on out fights. So, but being able to still stick to that, like, nope, I know what's right, and this is not right. Can't talk to me this way. This is not how I want to live my life. I have to do some self-soothing. I have to take a break as my system gets overwhelmed around her, and I have to reprogram and rewire, right? All of that. And so again, we're talking about a year-long process, which is, in the lifetime of things, not that long, but it was such an intense dedication that I had to this. I did the practices regularly, even outside of our women's circle, because I was in so much pain. I needed these resources. And they were so helpful. There was something that really healed throughout this process. And then being able to come into this full circle where it was like after low contact, then having a little bit more contact with the boundary practices, and then her just getting used to, yeah, this is who I am now. Get used to it, And then for me to just be like, yeah, that's a good thing to be. It's not a bad thing to be. It's a good thing to be. And just reprogramming what's right for me and coming full circle into my higher power and being able to be like, you know what? I'm good. I feel so good. So I always say my pipes are clean. That's the phrase I use. I've got clean pipes, and so I cannot thank you enough. Amazing, amazing.
I thank you for doing this work. I receive your gratitude, full heart. And I also thank you for doing this work. And I thank everyone that does that. Like, this work is so precious. It's one thing that I've discovered since I went through the whole feeling into maternal narcissism, realizing my mom was narcissistic, understanding actually that my childhood was not okay. That's the first point of awareness. And you mentioned that you actually look at your childhood, and up until this point, you sort of accepted that was your childhood. And then you get to a point of awareness where you're like, no, that was actually shit. And I have to see it for what it is. and maybe there's things to also be grateful for, which is great, but first I need to go through the phase of going and looking at it. So since going through that process, looking at the pain and suffering that women go through and carry, when we don't know what we've been through, when we don't feel that we're allowed to actually speak to what our mother maybe has done. And sometimes it's a narcissistic mother, sometimes it's narcissistic parents, because I mean, there's plenty of that as well, that can happen. So you may have both parents that are narcissistic. So this work is precious. Every time I see a woman that does this work, every time I am interacting with the listeners and they're sending emails and all of that, I'm like, this work is precious, and I'm grateful that you're doing it, all of you. I'm grateful that you're here, that you're listening, that you're searching for ways, that you're still looking for support, that you haven't given up, which is like the most important thing. So
Yeah.
great.
Well, and meta, like going really meta, 50,000 foot view, when we're in pain, number one, if you're in pain and you're listening to this might be part of your toolkit, right? Just use this practice as part of what can get you healed and out of that pain. And let other people who are really gifted, like you, Matilde, support that. That's number one. Number two is when we're in pain, we're probably hurting other people. We're probably hurting our kids and our spouses and our coworkers. And so, and that's not, I don't think, who people want to be. I don't think we want to be. If you're even here, it's you want something else in your life. And so to be accountable for your own pain will reverberate in ways that are so healthy for the rest of the family and the rest of who you interact with. And I think on a meta level, I'm very attracted to that because we're in a lot of pain in this world, right? So why not start here and see what we can do to understand our own pain, embrace it, heal it, and then interact with the people we love in that space instead of the painful place.
Yes, beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything, I have one last question for you. But first I wanted to ask you if there's anything else that you want to add, talking about your experience or your own, if there's anything else that you feel you want to share, you're totally welcome to do that.
I don't think so. I actually made notes because I wanted to make sure I hit some of the bigger transformative things, but no, I feel great. Thank you.
That's perfect. Okay. So my last question for you is, so a lot of women are, and we know that, I mean, I didn't know how, I actually felt so lonely at the beginning of this journey. And then I started the podcast and the amount of people, we reached 100,000 listen just a few weeks ago. And it was like, these are all women. And I know that there's men also listening. So I do know that there's also men listening, but you know that I do work with women. So please don't take it personal if I'm not including you in this, but I do love that you're listening and that this is helping you too. But there are so many women that are in the same situation that you described at the beginning, you know, before you joined the circle, and their personal version of that situation, but that they're feeling that pain, that they're feeling that disconnect, that they're suffering, and they don't know, they don't see a way out, maybe they feel alone, and all of that. And they're also scared to actually reach out for support and reach out for help, like I definitely was years ago. So, and I've been burned so many times too, that I was even more scared. And I know a lot of women share that they've been burned so many times. So within that context, they're hesitating to reach out, to find support, and all of that. So if you were having like you were having a cup of coffee with these women, like one-on-one, what would be a message? What would you tell them after your experience from your heart to these women that may be afraid to join, to reach out? Not necessarily my women's circle. They may be scared to reach out for support in general, but of course here we're talking about that offering because that's what I'm offering. So what would you tell them?
I mean, the first question I would ask is, aren't you sick of feeling this way? Do you want to change? Do you want something different? We can't do this alone. You know, we can't heal all by ourselves in our own heads. Our heads are sick, right? Lots of our bodies are sick. If we haven't come to terms with how some of this has impacted us, it's not good to be in that echo chamber of listening to your own pain. And it's so hard to trust. I understand that. It is so hard to trust because we've been basically shown there's only one way, right? And it's her way. And so it's very, very difficult. But what I'll say as somebody who has gone full circle is that, there's been healers in your life, there's been people in your life, angels in your life, bright lights in your life that have actually been helpful. What if there's someone that can help you with this specific thing? Why don't you just try it and see? And from your structure, Matilde, I'm so glad that you provide this little. Are you still doing that? Where you provide a little one-on-one before somebody would?
Oh yeah, there's the one-on-one program. Yes. Oh, and the application. Yes, I do.
I would say start there. I mean, just start there. At the very least, take the step that is curiosity, right? If you're ever fearful, just change it into curiosity. Be curious. Maybe this is something that might help. Let me try this one meeting, and then go from there. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, that's still there. That's still available, even with the launch of the community. The application call is not going to be necessary to join the community anymore, like it was for the Women's Circle, but it is still available for people that may have reservation, that may want to get curious, they may be afraid of joining, they want to get to know me first, they want to ask questions. So that's still there and that's still available. And through the link, even to join the waiting list for the community, you can actually still book the half-an-hour free call. It's totally free and there's no commitment required. But when you join that, that's there for you to actually feel safer and more comfortable.
Perfect. Yeah, that. And then also a shout out to your one-on-ones. Oh my God. The one-on-ones we've had have been, when there's really an issue that's super private or super scary, the one-on-one with you have been invaluable. So shout out to that too.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cecilia, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm beyond grateful for your vulnerability, for your courage to come on and share. This is a personal journey. It is a delicate topic. I know I'm very conscious, like if you're listening to this and you went on my website and you've checked testimonials, there's no pictures, because unless I know it's such a delicate topic, we can share about a lot of stuff, we can share about so much, but when we come to mother-daughter relationship, and of course a lot of these mothers are still alive, they're still around, and so it can be very very intense. So I totally appreciate the courage that it took to actually come on and do this, and I'm so grateful because I know that this is going to help so much the people listening in. And so if you're listening in and you want to express your gratitude for Cecilia, you're welcome to leave it in the comment, and you're also welcome to share with this episode with women that may need, and they still have fears and they're worried and they don't know, because to hear it from is one thing, to hear it from me, but to hear it from someone that's been through the process and that has come out the far side feeling much better and transformed, it's so much more powerful.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna wish everyone lots of love. I'm gonna stop the recording. You don't go anywhere though, so I can say goodbye to you properly, but we're saying goodbye to everyone listening in. And yeah, if you're interested in the offerings in the community, the waiting list is open and the link is in the description of this episode. And again, also all the other links of the practices, that the boundary setting roadmap, it's a free ebook, and that's also available in the description of this episode. So all of that is there. You go and check. And with that, I will see or talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.